"I have no qualms about dying." Those were Ramiro Gonzales's last words, spoken with a calm that would chill anyone's blood. The clock read 6:50 p.m., but he had been through this before. 6 execution dates, each postponed, each a cruel reminder of the line between life and death. Now, sitting in the coldest cell in Texas, staring at the table where his last meal would be served, Gonzales seemed more a shadow than a man. Absolute silence. Not a sigh. Only the sound of his own fear reverberating in the minds of those watching. But that frigid night in Huntsville, Texas, wasn't the beginning. It was merely the aftermath. Can you imagine being in his shoes? A condemned man, carrying all his mistakes, all the screams that could not be undone, while waiting for the world to decide the moment of his end. And at the same time, think of Bridget Townsend. Young, full of life, dreams as big as the innocence she carried in every step. She had no chance to protect herself, to run, to cry for help. And yet, her story, even tragically cut short, demands to be remembered. Here, between these two realities, there is something that connects us. The fragility of life, the weight of irreversible choices, and the desperate need for justice. When you look at an old photo of Bridget, it's impossible not to feel it. Her wide smile, bright eyes, and energy that filled any space. How many of us have had similar dreams? How many of us have trusted in a world that seemed safe, only to realize that darkness may be closer than we imagined? This is the point where true crime ceases to be just history and becomes reflection. What would we do if the innocence we once knew were ripped away in an instant? It is here that we recognize ourselves, in the pain, in the loss, in the silent anguish that lingers for days, months, years. But the connection doesn't end with mourning. There's an implicit promise in Ramiro Gonzales's account, the truth. Not the version he wanted you to believe, but the stark reality of the facts, revealed through investigations, confessions, and discoveries that no court can erase. We'll examine every detail, the last meal he ordered, the moment he faced death for the last time, his final words that echoed in silent hallways. And at the same time, we'll reconstruct the life that was taken, remembering Bridget not for the act that killed her, but for what she represented: youth, dreams, and humanity. And this is where the solution we promise reveals itself. It's not a solution of perfect justice, that has already happened at least formally, but a solution of understanding. As you walk this path with us, you'll see the patterns, the signs, the choices, and the consequences that shape tragedies like this. You'll understand that the pain we feel isn't just for the past, but for the future that could have been. And most importantly, you'll grasp the complexity of redemption, regret, and judgment, not just for the perpetrator but for all of us who observe, judge, and feel. So stay tuned. Every word in this video was chosen to take you deep into the story, without losing touch with who you are. Because between every silence of death and every reminder of lost life, there's a truth we can't ignore. And when we reach the last sentence, the last image, you'll understand, not everything is as it seems. Not everything ends. And the question that remains, about justice, redemption, and humanity, will echo long after the video ends. And as you feel the weight of this story, you realize it's not over. Every detail we reveal here is just a layer of what exists in this world of extreme choices, of pain that spreads silently, of secrets that time insists on keeping. If you still feel the chills, if doubt and fear still whisper within you, then you need to continue this journey with us. Subscribe to the channel. It's not just a click, it's allowing stories like Bridget and Romero's to continue reaching you. It's opening the door to more hidden truths, to more secrets no one has dared to tell, to what you feel but can't explain. Here, each video is a new piece of the puzzle. Each story leaves a living question, something you can't simply forget. And you'll want to see the next layer, the next twist, the next confession that challenges everything you believed about justice, redemption, and guilt. By subscribing, you're not alone. You're part of a place where pain, fear, and curiosity meet, where every mystery is felt, lived, and questioned. And when the next video comes out, you'll be there, ready to feel, to reflect, to lose yourself, and to find yourself amidst the shadows these stories leave behind. Because the truth never stops. And what you think you've seen, that you understand, will always take a turn you can't yet imagine. Click subscribe. Follow each story. And get ready. Because what comes next will shake you in ways you can't even imagine. As you observe every detail of the approaching execution, you realize it's not just Ramiro Gonzales's body that lies there, immobilized in the cold light of the death chamber. It's a whole life folded in on itself, decisions made, doors half open that led to a path of no return. He breathes slowly, but each sigh is heavy, almost palpable, carrying the impact of years of choices, of violence, of regrets he's learned to hide even from himself. And you feel as if you could touch the tension pulsing on your skin, the red line hovering in the silent atmosphere, where every shadow seems to whisper what could have been different. Now let me take you back to before all this. Before the cold light, before the corridor separating life from death, there was Bridget. Can you imagine her energy? Every step, every laugh, every dream seemed to illuminate the small world of Bandera County. She wasn't just an 18-year-old girl, she was a promise of the future, a star untouched by the darkness that stalked silently. Friends spoke of her with an almost sacred admiration. Family members remembered simple gestures, how she put others before herself, how she smiled effortlessly, how her presence transformed the routine into something light. And you feel it not as a story told but as if you were there, seeing that light, almost able to touch it. While she dreamed of the future, someone else walked toward their dark destiny. But we're not there yet. Before you imagine the final horror, I want you to feel the weight of invisible proximity. Bridget's world and Romero's world still coexisted in silent parallels, lines that seemed never to cross, but which carried the tension of an inevitable encounter. Romero, at that moment, already bore within himself the transformation that would make him unrecognizable. A mindset shaped by wrong decisions, by small acts of violence that grew into monsters. Can you sense this? The impact of seemingly small choices, which gather shadows around someone, until the darkness no longer fits in any safe space. And here's what few see. The hidden truth lies not only in the final acts but behind the scenes, in the moments when a young man loses himself in syndromes of guilt, impulses and frustrations no one dares to name. Romero grew up surrounded by instability, by opportunities that failed to materialize, by ignored signs that something inside him was slowly breaking. And you feel this tension as if it were your own breath because the story spares no details. Petty thefts, fights, alcohol, drugs. All of this as a preamble, setting the stage for the inevitable collision with Bridget's life. But there's more. His every step carried not only intention, but the complexity of future regrets he never knew he would have, and you realize, almost instinctively, that the justice he expects will come too late. Now imagine Bridget on that day. The half-open door of her boyfriend's house, the late afternoon light streaming through a crack, the smell of a fireplace and cold coffee. A moment that could have been banal, ordinary, and that for her represented only safety, warmth, normalcy. But the world outside that door already carried a disturbing presence. Romero approached unhurriedly, but with calculated precision, almost invisible, and you find yourself holding your breath, imagining the moment when their fates will collide. You feel the anticipation of horror, but also the humanity that still pulses in both of them, because every second before the crime is filled with choices, with internal transformation, with awareness that doesn't always manifest in words. And it's at this point that the condemned man's mind becomes fascinating. It's not just fear. It's reflection. It's confronting his own past, every decision, every fragment of ethics and immorality that intermingle. He thinks of Bridget, unsure whether he remembers her as a victim or as a symbol of what he lost, which awakens a forbidden fascination in you, that feeling of psychological voyeurism that makes your chest tighten. Guilt, empathy, the tension of imminent death, everything blends together, creating an emotional knot that you feel without realizing it. As the night progresses and the Texas darkness envelopes the landscape, what seems clear begins to unravel. You begin to doubt, to question, searching for clues in every gesture, every pause, every detail of Gonzalez's expression. Lies and truths, secrets and revelations emerge fragmented, like distant echoes you pick up with your restless mind. And even when you think you understand, something subtly shifts. A door opens, a red streak glows in the shadows, a hidden truth reveals itself for an instant, and you feel like everything is just beginning. Bridget's mind and Romero's, each in its own space, each carrying its own weight, teach us something silent. Pain isn't just from the past, it echoes in the present, in the way you observe, feel, and connect. Every choice, every act of violence, every sigh of regret leaves traces that we, the viewers, follow almost without realizing it. And you realize that what comes next, what is yet to be revealed, carries even more layers, even more impact, even more emotional complexity than any scene you ever imagined. And it's at this threshold, between what happened and what will be discovered, that you feel curiosity whispering, that empathy pulls you closer, that the mystery becomes a silent companion. Because it's not just about understanding Romero or Bridget, it's about feeling the effect of every decision, every shadow, every silence that stretches between life and death. Every detail you thought you understood soon shatters, and you realize you're involved in something bigger, deeper, more unsettling than any expectations you brought with you. While you still feel the silent echo of the cold light on Ramiro Gonzales, realize that before any formal conviction, before any execution scheduled or postponed, there was a story shaping every cell of who he would become. Don't just think of actions, think of layers. A mentality shaped by half-open doors that no one entered, by decisions that seemed small but became abysses. Ramiro Gonzales's childhood was a fragmented mosaic of absence and noise. Parents who existed as distant echoes, boundaries that were only imaginary lines, rules that were swallowed up by domestic chaos. And you feel, almost instinctively, that something in him was transforming, not suddenly, but like the silent erosion of an underground river, consuming what could have been different. There was no overt malice yet. Just subtle signs, little sparks of unease. He was the kind of boy who didn't fit into the world around him, who withdrew without realizing it, who sought invisible relief in risk. Alcohol came early, cigarettes, curiosity about harder drugs. Each decision was a thread stretching toward a spiral no one could stop. Do you notice the invisible tension? The impact of these choices isn't manifested in headlines, but in the silent transformation of the mind of a teenager who was beginning to believe nothing could contain him. Violent pranks, petty transgressions, thefts, fights. Each of these acts seemed isolated, inconsequential, but you feel their gravity growing beneath the surface, like chains unseen, like a rope that would one day wrap around someone's fate. Crime doesn't arise from nothing. It's born of repetition, of wear and tear, of constant contact with broken boundaries. Ramiro wasn't just dangerous, he was shaped by a world that allowed danger to grow within him, a world where empathy and guilt mingled, where the pain he felt had no room to transform into awareness. And this is where the contrast becomes almost unbearable. Bridget, with her dreams, her smile, her ability to light up any room. Ramiro, with his invisible wounds, carrying tension, anger, and instability like armor. You feel the polarity of these lives coexisting in parallel. Bridget's every action was an expansion, her every dream a light. Ramiro's every step was a retraction, her every impulse a dark weight that silently accumulated. And even as you try to separate the good from the bad, something inside you realizes that their encounter would not be natural, it would be inevitable, as if the universe were preparing the clash with cruel precision. Imagine him in that turbulent adolescence, lost between choices and consequences, without a mentor or moral compass. He becomes a force seeking not redemption but escape. The transformation is invisible, but you feel the effect. He's increasingly unpredictable, increasingly dangerous, and each small infraction brings him closer to a hidden truth that even he doesn't fully understand. It's as if each minor act is merely a rehearsal for what is to come, a silent preparation for a night that will change everything. And you realize that this psychological construct isn't just for him. It's for you too. Because you begin to feel the weight of history, the complexity of human decisions, the silently growing red line, and the tension between what is understandable and what is incomprehensible. You feel the pain of lost potential, the regret that doesn't yet exist, the allure of the forbidden, all at once. It's a safe yet addictive fear that grips the mind and makes the heart beat faster, as if you were as vulnerable as the victim you've yet to meet. While Bridget continued dreaming of her future, going through ordinary days unaware of the danger, Ramiro walked toward a choice that would be irreversible. Every small decision, every previous act of violence, every escape from responsibility, every touch of impulsiveness built a path that could not be undone. And you feel it, almost as if you were inside his own mind, sensing the spiral that was pulling him away from any chance of redemption, any possibility of turning back. And so, as you breathe in the silent Texas chill, you realize the narrative isn't just about the crime, but about the psychology that precedes it. About the impact of a dysfunctional childhood, about the invisible transformation that shapes an adult capable of crossing limits you never imagined. About the hidden truth that reveals itself only when paths finally cross. And then, one January night in 2001, the worlds of Bridget and Ramiro collided. An inevitable encounter, fraught with tension, with choices that cannot be undone, with destinies irreversibly intertwined. And you, the silent confidant of this story, feel the thrill of anticipation, the weight of the impact that is about to explode, unsure of what you will see next, but realizing that the line between what is real and what is interpreted has already begun to blur, leaving only a sense of unease that you will carry with you, breathing along with the narrative, ready to discover every secret that has not yet been revealed. Can you imagine the exact moment security dissolves? Bridget, so full of life, laughing at something that seemed insignificant, lost in thoughts of the future and silent promises no one knew. She didn't hear the door creak, didn't notice the approaching red line. You feel normalcy tearing around her, as if the heavy air of tension begins to permeate every corner of the room. Every detail becomes more intense. The jingle of a dropped key, the creak of a forgotten hinge, the faint sound of footsteps that shouldn't be there. You feel it with her, as if you were in the room, almost floating beside her, aware of every lengthening shadow. The entry was brutal, yet almost silent. A door was ajar, pushed open with calculated force. A cold light illuminated the hallway, reflecting in the eyes of those who hadn't expected to see anyone. The man, Ramiro, gun in hand, expression hard, muscles tense. He's not just an intruder. He's the embodiment of the spiral that began decades earlier, the consequence of choices, of invisible wounds, of a mindset shaped by abandonment and constant risk. You feel it. It's not just fear. It's the understanding that something inside him no longer knows limits. You feel the weight of the psychological impact of every step he takes. Bridget realizes it too late. Shock courses through her body like a jolt that leaves no room for reason. You feel her heart racing, her breath catching, her thoughts trying to regroup as logic buckles in the face of the unexpected. And yet, she tries to react, unaware that every move is now tied to decisions that aren't hers, to a game that began long before she opened the door that day. And you, the silent confidant in this story, feel the tension growing, almost suffocating as you watch the vulnerability become palpable. The kidnapping isn't just physical, it's a violation of mental, emotional, and psychological space. Every step Bridget takes is an effort to maintain her sanity, to prevent terror from completely consuming her. Every detail you perceive reflects the construction of Romero's mind, the impact her past experiences have had, and how the crime silently takes shape before it's even committed. You feel like you're witnessing, along with her, the transformation of everyday life into something irreversible. And in the car, every mile that separates them from the ranch is filled with suspense. You smell the fear, the vibration of anxiety that fills every inch of space. Bridget tries to memorize everything. Every curve in the road, every lengthening shadow, every sound that could be a sign of salvation or damnation. And you realize, viscerally, that the line between reality and interpretation has already begun to blur. There are no easy answers, only the impact of the situation, the realization that every wrong decision, every choice that seemed small, now echoes with irreversible consequences. Meanwhile, Ramiro maintains a disturbing calm. It's the mentality of someone who sees no boundaries. Every look, every gesture is charged with a hidden truth known only to him. You feel the contrast between Bridget's vital energy and Romero's dense aura, almost palpable, like a fog infiltrating the viewer's mind. Every second is a silent battle, not just for physical control but for psychological dominance. The tension creates an extra layer of suspense. You don't see everything, but you sense that something terrible is approaching. And you begin to question yourself, along with her. Was there something that could have prevented this? Was Romero's story predestined to this point? Every detail of his childhood, every decision, every abandonment, every invisible wound, seems to silently conspire toward the moment you're observing now. And you feel the weight of it, almost like vicarious guilt, as if you're witnessing the impact of choices that were never yours, but that you now carry along with the narrative. The cold light of the car reflects in Bridget's eyes, as the half-open door of fate closes behind her. The sound of the engine is a drumbeat that marks the rhythm of inevitability. And even if you want to look away, you can't. Every curve in the road is a layer of mystery that builds, every breath a reminder of the risk no one else could have foreseen. The spectator's safe fear is addictive. You feel the uncertainty, the tension, the psychological voyeurism, the confrontation with mortality and the approaching justice, almost touching your skin. And you realize that the kidnapping is just the beginning, that the true impact is yet to come. Every mile traveled, every calculated gesture, every silent pause between unspoken words, builds a narrative of pain, empathy, and fascination with the forbidden. You feel like you're discovering alongside Bridget, step by step, the hidden truth unfolding fragmentarily, that revelations are hidden behind the scenes, waiting to explode at a moment no one can predict. The car disappears down the deserted road, and you remain there, suspended between lost normality and imminent terror. The feeling of psychological voyeurism intensifies, your mind straining between unanswered questions and false leads. You realize you're part of something bigger than an isolated crime. You're caught in a spiral of choices, a mindset shaped by abandonment, decisions that become destiny, an impact that reverberates not only in lives but in your perception of what is fair, what is human, what is inevitable. And then, as the city lights fade behind them, you realize that the real terror, the one that redefines every reference to safety and trust, is only beginning on the way to the ranch, and that the silence that descends is only the prelude to revelations yet to come, as the half-open door of destiny slowly closes behind Bridget and Romero, leaving you with the lingering unease, the chill down your spine, and the certainty that you are about to witness something that transcends the immediate shock and takes root in the mind, in the psychological impact and silent transformation that every human choice carries. You're feeling it, aren't you? That tightness in your chest, the uncertainty that keeps you from breathing properly. You know that feeling like you're looking through a half-open door, seeing something that should remain hidden? This is where you come in. I want you to leave your mark on this silence. A word, anything that comes from your deepest breath, from your quietest fear. Write cold light, if you felt the chill that runs through Bridget's mind. Write red streak, if you sensed danger approaching before it was even visible. Don't overthink. Just feel. Just let it out. What you write is not just a comment. It's a gesture of presence, a whisper that says, I saw it too. I felt it too. And as you type, you feel part of death row, part of the narrative that unfolds behind the scenes of life and death, of the decisions that transform destinies. Each word that appears there builds an invisible bridge between the viewer and the observer, between fear and understanding, between the pain Bridget feels and the one you perhaps carry. Have you ever wondered if you'd be in her shoes? Or in the shoes of someone watching, helpless, knowing nothing can change the inevitable course of events? There are no easy answers here. But there is your voice. There is your perception. Every comment is a mirror of your mind facing the abyss. Will you let it go, or will you write what you feel no matter how difficult it may be? What if, for a moment, you dared to speak that word that's been stuck deep in your chest since the beginning of the story? What silent gesture would you make if you were there? A no, a yes, a why. Anything that connects you to what you've just witnessed. This small action, this simple touch of presence, keeps the narrative spiraling, allows hidden truths to continue to be revealed. Now look within yourself. Feel the shock, the guilt, the regret that comes along with the curiosity. Feeling uncomfortable? Good. This discomfort is the gateway to reflection, the key to understanding the real impact of human decisions, the weight of each choice. And as you feel this, as you type, you are not alone. Others feel the same. Others are also trapped in this silent corridor, in this ritual of safe fear, in this place where every word has power. So write. What went through your mind when you sensed the approaching danger? What did you feel when you saw Bridget and Romero move, even though you knew nothing could change the fate that was shaping up? Choose a word, a phrase, a symbolic gesture. Leave it there. And as you do, feel the invisible connection that forms with everyone who breathes the same heavy air, with everyone who participates in this experience without knowing it, with everyone who becomes complicit in the silent narrative. Your comment is your mark on the corridor of history. It's your whisper in the silence of the death chamber, your touch on the half-open door of destiny. So what will you leave there? Cold light? Red streak? Or something no one could have predicted? Right. Feel. Unburden yourself. And realize that each of your letters is a piece that keeps the narrative alive, ready to reveal the next movement you can't yet see, but already feel forming. Do you notice the change in the air even before any sound is heard? The half-open door lets out a cold light, just enough to make out the outline of the presence invading Bridget's space. His every step reverberates like a silent warning in your mind, and you feel your heart race uncontrollably along with it. It's in that moment that the security you believe you have, and that Bridget believed in, dissolve like smoke. There are no screams yet, just the red line pulsing through the air, an almost palpable tension that extends through every corridor of the ranch, reflecting the impact of decisions no one else will see. You're faced with the spiral of crime before it even materializes, and it's impossible not to wonder. If you were there, would you be able to keep your cool, or would you be swallowed up by adrenaline, fear, and the need to act? Meanwhile, Romero walks in silence. His unstable childhood, his years of drug use, his violence, his petty crimes, all of this has built a mindset that knows no mercy. It's fascinating and terrifying at the same time. His every decision, every misguided choice, every path he takes in the darkness of his own transformation, converges on this moment. You perceive the hidden truth behind the scenes. It's not just about action, it's about the weight that each layer of experience imprints on human behavior. You observe how the past becomes the present, how pain and frustration condense into calculated coldness, into control that borders on obsessive. And you understand that what's about to happen isn't impulsive, it's inevitable, a consequence of a lifetime of mistakes and obscure decisions. And you feel the anxiety rising, as if breathing along with them, each second stretched by the tension seeping between the walls and the floor of the ranch. Stay with me until the end. It's not just an invitation, it's a promise. If you stay here until the very end, you will perceive what no one has dared to reveal, you will understand the behind the scenes, the revelations that only a silent presence can bring. Every detail you perceive now, every smell, every shadow, every gesture will be rewarded. And you will understand the real impact, the transformation that the human mind undergoes when confronted with the abyss of violence and guilt. Bridget feels the cold touch her skin before she even looks at him. You feel it along with her because you're here, breathing every moment, feeling every hesitation, every approaching shadow. The first blow is quick, almost imperceptible, but the effect reverberates in your mind. It's visceral. The ranch, which seemed safe, is now just a theater of silence and fear, a space where coldness manifests itself in every gesture. You realize that violence doesn't need loud noise to exist. The pain is silent, intense, eroding hope, revealing the hidden truth we often choose to ignore. The shot that ends Bridget's life is dry, abrupt, but in your mind, it echoes for minutes that stretch into hours. You see the body abandoned in the field not just as matter, but as a symbol of choices that led to disaster, of mindsets shaped by abandonment and risk, of lives intertwined by paths no one should have crossed. And you understand that, for 2 years, it seemed as if Ramiro had disappeared with his secret, but the silence is never complete. There are traces, echoes, revelations that emerge between the lines of the story, waiting to be discovered. You feel the need to take a deep breath to process each moment, but the tension doesn't relent. And it's in this space that you perceive the dimension of the forbidden, of the safe fear that keeps you still, almost voyeuristic but still safe. You observe, feel, think, and ask yourself, was it possible to predict? Was it possible to avoid? Every false lead, every shadow, every doubt, every question is an invitation to dive deeper, to connect with the abyss that the narrative gradually reveals. And yet there is something more. Something that has not yet been said, that moves on the edges of perception, waiting for the right moment to emerge. You feel it, don't you? This whisper of truth approaching, this feeling that everything you've seen so far is just the first layer, just the initial impact of a story that will reveal itself even more intensely. Stay with me until the end. Every second you remain here, every detail you absorb, every emotion you allow to course through you, will be part of the revelation that follows. You won't just watch, you will feel, reflect, and perceive the depth of what hides in the silence, in the shadows, and behind the scenes that shape decisions, consequences, and human transformation. Night falls over the ranch and you realize there's no turning back. The air is heavy, thoughts intertwine with your senses, and you realize with painful clarity that what happened to Bridget isn't just an isolated tragedy. It's a breaking point, a milestone where lives are transformed and mindsets are exposed. The pain, the guilt, the reflection, the tension, all of it condenses into an instant where you're with her, with Ramiro, and silently with every truth that has yet to emerge. The captivity, the coldness, the shooting, the abandonment, all of it forms a tapestry of emotions and decisions you can't ignore. Every shadow that moves, every detail that emerges between the lines, is an invitation to move forward, to see behind the scenes, to feel the real impact of human choices, and to connect with the mystery that still hangs in the air, waiting to be unraveled. You feel, perceive, understand, and yet, there is more to discover, more layers to explore, more hidden truths that only time and continued attention will reveal. You feel the emptiness before you even realize it exists. The silence that descends after the gunshot isn't just the absence of sound, it's the absence of everything Bridget represented, of all the dreams she carried, of the laughter that filled the corners of her home and now seemed to echo only off the empty walls. And you realize, along with every person who loved her, that hope can rot. A heavy, almost tangible feeling that creeps through the city streets, seeps into the closed windows, into the lights of houses that watch over nothingness, as if everyone were waiting for a miracle that never comes. Every poster taped to a lamppost, every advertisement in the newspaper, every helicopter flight across the night sky is a desperate attempt to hold on to something that's already lost, and you feel this frustration with an almost physical intensity, as if you were holding something slippery between your fingers. Bridget's friends roam the streets in a search that's unclear whether it's for her or for answers. You sense the gnawing anxiety, the uncertainty that gnaws even more. Each passing minute blurs the line between memory and reality. And you feel, almost without realizing it, that you're connected to this despair, that you live each moment of anticipation as if your own heart were being crushed. The entire city seems to breathe in time with this absence, a collective organism that feeds on doubt, uncertainty, and pain that no one can verbalize. You sense the psychological impact of a prolonged disappearance. subtle mental shifts, hasty decisions, suspicions that arise out of nowhere, suspicious glances, relationships broken by the tension of not knowing. And as the city moves, searching for answers, you feel the pressure from every behind-the-scenes gathering. The media, the neighbors, the police, all make up a mosaic of reactions, frustrations, and hidden truths, each revealing a piece of what no one wants to admit. You realize that every action taken, every choice made, can alter the course of the investigation, can influence what will be remembered or forgotten. It's a cruel reminder that not all transformations are visible, not all impacts are immediate, and that the hidden truth doesn't always reveal itself directly. And you wonder, where was Ramiro during all this? How can someone who moved toward the abyss remain invisible while the world crumbles around them? The contrast between his coldness and the desperation of an entire community creates an almost unbearable tension. You feel like his every decision was a thread pulling the plot to places no one could have predicted. The human mind becomes a labyrinth, and you are invited to navigate it, to understand hidden motivations, to peer into the dark corners of the psyche that normally remain sealed. And as hope rots, Bridget's memory becomes a symbol of silent resistance. Every poster, every lit candle, every prayer whispered in the darkness of the night reflects the human attempt to maintain connection with something that has already been lost. And you, a confidant of this narrative, feel the tension, the pain, the urgency, but also the need to understand. Because it is in this contrast between loss and search, between emptiness and action, that you perceive the true extent of a crime's impact. And then, suddenly what seemed permanent begins to shift. A different, unexpected crime of a different nature disrupts the city's routine and, almost ironically, drags Ramiro back into the hands of the law. You realize that nothing is predictable, that human decisions, no matter how calculated, always carry invisible risks, and that justice, even belatedly, finds unexpected paths. The void of absence is momentarily filled with a sense of movement, of change, of consequences emerging from silence, and you feel, almost physically, that every shadow, every clue, every hidden revelation is approaching a point of convergence. And you understand, with chilling clarity, that history is never linear. Every layer of suffering, every fragment of fear, every decision made in the shadows shapes what's to come. The pain, the guilt, the curiosity, the mystery, all of it intertwines, creating a tapestry of tension that you're beginning to unravel. And it's in that moment that you realize there's still so much to explore, that each revealed secret awakens another, and that the spiral of the narrative never stops. It only thickens, waiting for you to remain attentive, to perceive the behind-the-scenes details, the impacts, the decisions, and the hidden truth that will emerge next. The wind blows over the posters still trembling in the streets, and you sense that the city, though silent, never forgets. Every move Ramiro made, every step that led him back to the law, every fragment of frayed hope, all of it mingles in your mind, leaving unanswered questions, suspicions, images, and sensations you can't help but relive. And even with him now in the hands of justice, his absence still weighs heavily, the psychological transformation lingers, and you realize that the void of loss, doubt, and human impact will not be so easily filled. The air in the interrogation room seemed denser than usual, almost suffocating, as if carrying with it the years of silence and secrets Ramiro had accumulated. You feel the tension as if you were sitting next to the investigator, listening to every word that moves between the cold air and the fluorescent light, every heavy pause that seems to crush time. He is arrested for another offense, a minor crime seemingly distant, but which now becomes the key that unlocks the hidden truth, the one everyone sought without knowing exactly what they were looking for. And you realize almost instinctively that Ramiro's psychological transformation didn't begin at that moment. It stems from a series of decisions, from a mindset shaped by frustrations and impulses, and which now manifests itself in confessions that chill the spine. He begins to speak slowly, his voice low, almost a whisper that cuts through the room like a sharp wire. Every detail he reveals more than just the facts. It reveals the psychological impact he carried, the calculated coldness intertwined with moments of hesitation, as if his own conscience were testing the limits of what he could bear to confess. You feel the fear and empathy at the same time, fear of what he did, empathy for understanding for a moment the human complexity that allowed him to get there. And each sentence is another layer, a fragment of the truth that slowly unfolds, transforming the silence into a living, almost palpable narrative, in which you are a confidant. He describes the location of the body with cruel precision. Every gesture, every reference to a spot on the ground, the cold light reflected on the ranch walls, the dark corners where the earth still bears traces of a crime no one imagined would ever be revealed. You feel the tension rise like a wire of electricity. Each word is a punch, then a slow immersion, making your body react before your mind can even fully process it. And the moment he mentions the exact location, you realize you're mentally walking along the muddy trails, the damp, metallic smell that still lingers, as if you could touch the macabre reality without ever moving from your spot. When the remains are found, the description isn't just visual, it's sensorial. The texture of the soil, the chill that pierces your skin, the silence interrupted only by the click of careful footsteps, the feeling that the truth carries physical and psychological weight. You feel the shock, the pain, the curiosity that mingles with repulsion and fascination, because there's something addictive about the way the truth emerges from nowhere, slowly, layer by layer. And even with the crime confirmed, you realize it's not the end. The story lingers behind the scenes, in the decisions that led to that moment, in the invisible impacts that still reverberate. As you watch the detailed confession, you encounter clues that challenge your perception. Subtle inconsistencies, hesitations that raise more questions than answers, fragments that could be truths or fabrications of Romero's mind, and you find yourself doubting along with it, groping in the dark for understanding. Each revelation carries a silent controversy, a confrontation with human limits you didn't know you were prepared to face. And that's where the psychological voyeurism intensifies. You don't just observe, you feel, you imagine, you connect with the family's pain, with the city's unrest, with the abyss that opens before those who commit and those who suffer. And yet, as the truth materializes on the ranch's soil, you realize that justice is only a fragment of the entire narrative. Every backstory, every emotional impact, every previous decision that led Romero to this point intertwine, creating a web of revelations you can't help but follow. There are layers that remain hidden, stories within the story, motives that will never be fully clear, and you feel the effect of it, a chill that runs down your spine and leaves an indelible mark on your perception of what is human and what is monstrous. The silence that follows the discovery is heavy, almost solid, but even in this emptiness, there is a subtle pulse, the awareness that the story doesn't end with the body being found. There are decisions, transformations, impacts that continue to resonate, and you realize that while Romero finally faces the consequences of his actions, the echoes of his mind and the lives he touched remain, waiting to be understood. Each revelation is an invitation to peer behind the scenes of the human mind, to delve into the labyrinths of guilt, regret, pain, and the fascination with the forbidden. And you sense deeply that the narrative still doesn't stop. The exposed body is just a fragment of a larger web, where hidden truths, fate-changing decisions, and the psychological impact of each act intertwine. You realize as you mentally walk through Bridget's remains and Romero's confessions, that every detail, every silence, every hesitation is a thread pulling you deeper into a story that, despite the exposure of the truth, continues to pulse, to reveal, to challenge your perception and test the limits of your empathy. The wind blows through the ranch's trees, carrying with it the scent of disturbed earth and the sense that something larger remains, invisible and unsettling. You understand that each uncovered fragment is a half-open door, a cold light at the end of a hallway, a red streak that warns that history is still moving, and you, a silent confidant, feel each step of this spiral, each revelation still waiting to be unveiled, preparing the ground for what will come next. The courtroom was silent, but the silence carried weight. You can feel the sharp air, the tension spreading through the wooden chairs, as if every glance carried the force of a hammer. The cold light streaming through the windows seems to highlight every detail, every tense expression, every sweat that imperceptibly runs down the face of someone who knows the whole world is watching. And you, standing outside the scene, can almost hear Romero's thoughts, that inner turmoil that mixes fear, resignation, and a strange sense of inevitability. He walks to the center, surveys the evidence, looks at the photos, images no one should see, but which you, as a silent confidant, are almost obliged to witness alongside. Each testimony is a blade cutting through reality. Measured words, accounts of horror and loss, fragments that bring your mind back to the ranch, to the captivity, to that night when everything twisted. You feel the family's pain as if it were your own, the invisible impact of every decision that led to this moment. And even while Romero remains cold on the surface, there are subtle signs of psychological transformation, of a man who has imprisoned himself in his own mindset and now faces the full weight of the consequences. Justice, in this moment, seems concrete, almost tangible, but you know, and feel, that the trial is not just about him, it is about all the behind-the-scenes events that remained hidden, about the invisible effect of each choice. The sound of the judge's gavel reverberates like a suppressed thunderclap. Conviction of aggravated murder. The death penalty is imposed. You feel the gravity of the sentence like a wave that ripples through the room, penetrates your bones and strikes your mind. Each word seems to rewrite the future but also leaves questions hanging in the air. How does a man's mind reach the point of committing such an atrocity? What fragments of childhood, what moments of pain and frustration, what wrong decisions, or hidden truths, shaped him this way? You find yourself groping between horror and curiosity, between safe fear and the need to understand. As the room disperses, you feel the weight of reality and interpretation merging. Every detail, the expressions of the witnesses, the behind-the-scenes investigation, the evidence Romero tried to hide, intertwine in a narrative you feel pulsing but can't fully explain. The dimness of the courtroom corridors, the half-open doors that lead to documents and files, the cold light reflecting off papers and chairs, everything becomes an echo of the condemned man's mind, a reflection of the red line that has always lurked. You can almost hear his thoughts, his attempts to rationalize, to justify, to emotionally survive each moment, as the sentence becomes physical reality. And yet, even with justice pronounced, there's a sense of incompleteness, of fragmented truth, of revelations lingering silently in the background. You sense that the psychological impact of this moment belongs not only to Romero, but to everyone who touched that story in some way, to the families, to the city, to the collective memory of the terror that ensued. Every decision, every fragment of a distorted mindset, every shadow that remained hidden until now reverberates in the courtroom and beyond, leaving traces that only you can perceive, almost like a privileged spectator, almost like an unwitting accomplice to a truth that is still unfolding. And as the courtroom empties, you realize that Romero's fate, though now officially sealed, still holds twists and turns. There's something behind the scenes, between archives and memories, between investigative relics and judicial decisions, that suggests the end isn't absolute. Every detail you absorb, every sense of horror and empathy, every fragment of doubt, prepares you for something even deeper, even more disturbing, an additional layer of revelation that will challenge your understanding of crime, the human mind, and justice. It's as if history breathes within the courtroom walls, waiting for you to follow, attentive, feeling the chill of the light streaming through the windows, the red streak that lingers, the door ajar to what's yet to come. You realize how much weight each detail of this story carries. Every secret revealed, every shadow moving behind the scenes, everything is still alive. And this is where you come in. Yes, you who feel the chill of truth even before it's spoken, who stir uneasily with the doubt that won't dissipate. There's something powerful in following along, in not letting these stories fade into the void. When you subscribe, you're not just clicking a button. You become part of this space where mystery breathes, where hidden truth finds those who observe it attentively. Because I need you to be here. To be ready to discover, to feel every twist and turn, every psychological impact, every decision that shaped lives and destinies. With each story we reveal, the channel grows with you, with your curiosity, with your need to understand the forbidden, the incomprehensible. Your subscription is not just a gesture. It's a silent pact that none of this will be forgotten. It's the promise that every half-open door will continue to reveal what lies hidden in the shadows. So, if you feel this calling, this restlessness that keeps you awake, this shiver that runs through your skin when the story gets too close to the truth, do your part. Click follow, be here. Because what comes next isn't for everyone. But for you who have already listened to these walls, who have felt the red line and the cold light piercing your mind, the next layer of the story will cut even deeper. And you will want to feel it. You will want to be here when every secret is revealed. You observe Romero in the cell. The cold light illuminates half of his face, the other remains plunged in shadow, as if carrying two destinies at once. He kneels in a prayer that seems more like a ritual than a plea for forgiveness. Some inmates look at him with curiosity, others with suspicion. You sense the tension pulsing in the air. The same mind that planned the violence now offers advice, words, and almost paternal presence. It's disconcerting, almost impossible to digest. You sense, for an instant, a fissure in the world's logic. How can someone capable of absolute horror become a mentor, a giver of himself, an example of faith? And that's when the psychiatrist, his chair creaking under the weight of doubt, backs down. He admits he was wrong. That he could never have foreseen this transformation. That there are no exact formulas for the human mind. You hear this and feel a chill run down your spine. The same man who was once just a red line now evokes empathy and bewilderment at the same time. But the doubt remains, penetrating, insistent. Is redemption enough when the past screams in every photo, in every testimony, in every fragment of what was done? Romero donates a kidney. A gesture that seems plucked from another time, another life, from a universe where conscience weighs more heavily than evil. Some see a hero, others a fraud. The city argues, the lawyers ponder, and you feel the controversy crossing the screen of history, penetrating your own convictions. Justice versus redemption. Guilt versus repentance. You feel every argument, every reaction, as if you were inside the courtroom, in the silent heat of confronting morality. There are no easy answers. No comfort. Only a constant questioning. Who deserves it? Who decides? Who can forgive? Meanwhile, Romero continues to mold himself into his own narrative. He reads books in his cell, writes letters, advises the younger generation, observes every gesture, every decision with obsessive attention. His mindset transforms before your eyes. You realize this isn't just about him. It's about the hidden truth that lies in every decision, every act of violence, and how it resonates behind the scenes of the life he stole and the lives he now touches. Impact. Revelations. Every gesture laden with meaning that you try to decipher, but the line between genuine change and strategy remains blurred, almost like a half-open door to an abyss you feel all too close. The death clock keeps ticking. Each tick is a cruel reminder that even with belated recognition, transformation, redemptive actions, and newfound faith, there is an endpoint he cannot avoid. You feel the weight of this in your own mind. What is worth more? What is enough for justice? The human mind bends over these questions, and you feel the pain, the restlessness, the fascination with the forbidden. It's almost psychological voyeurism. You observe without being able to intervene, but you feel deeply the conflict that runs through every cell of that prison, every moment of Romero's life, every shadow he carries. And there's something else. Something you haven't fully grasped yet, but which lingers over him like an unfulfilled promise. A secret that won't be fully revealed, lurking in the corners of the narrative, between the cold walls of the cell and the gaze of those watching him. A red herring, perhaps. Or a hidden truth, waiting to shatter the balance he's trying to achieve. You feel this tension pulsing, almost as if you can hear the very heart of the story, beating in sync with yours. His every gesture is calculated, every word measured. You realize almost painfully that the transformation doesn't erase the past, but creates layers of complexity that defy any simplistic judgment. You want to understand, you want to solve the enigma, but with each answer that emerges, new questions arise. You feel the same unease you felt when Bridget disappeared, when the body was found, when the court handed down the sentence. Everything echoes now in Romero's silent presence, in the shock of the transformation that defies expectations, in the doubt that corrodes certainties. And you find yourself reflecting on human limits, on impossible choices and irreversible consequences, on what it means to carry guilt, on what it means to seek redemption when time is against you. You realize the power of the narrative, the intensity of the impact, how much these revelations shape not only his story, but your own perception of right and wrong, forgiveness and condemnation. The controversy grows, silent and insidious, permeating every prison corridor and every page of the case file. And you sense more layers, more decisions, more secrets yet to emerge. Each moment is a deeper dive into the mind of a man who, even condemned, defies your understanding of justice, redemption, and morality. And as you breathe along with his every step, every choice, every gesture, you realize there is still much to reveal, that the death clock is merely a cruel measure of time, while the true weight of the story lies in the details you have yet to uncover. What would you do if you were in the same place? If you had to confront your own conscience with acts that cannot be erased, yet still seek transformation? You feel the chill running down your spine, the weight of doubt, the red line that never disappears. And even as you contemplate this, the narrative whispers that nothing is truly finished, that each revelation, each gesture of redemption, still leaves a door ajar for the next moment, for the next shock, for the next layer of truth yet to emerge. You notice the cold corridor, the steel bars reflecting the harsh white light that filters through the small windows. The clock strikes the exact time. Each tick feels like a gunshot, each shadow cast on the wall a silent warning. Today is no ordinary day. Today would have been Bridget's birthday. And you feel the weight of this detail as if time were playing cruel games, mixing memory and destiny, remembrance and punishment. The death chamber has no mercy, but it allows you to observe, almost voyeuristically, every tiny gesture of Romero. You feel his heart, or imagine you do, beating with decisions that can never be reversed, with thoughts that intertwine between guilt and faith, regret and inner survival. You walk steadily, but each step is heavy. You sense the transformation and, at the same time, the shadow of what he once was. The mindset of a man who has known the abyss, who has fed on the forbidden, who has kept secrets in every wall of his memory. And now you observe the impact of this journey. Every look he gives is a revelation, a hidden truth that only you share silently with him. The fear you feel is safe, addictive, and the chill that runs down your spine is just a reminder that justice and redemption can coexist, but never completely meet. Romero turns, takes a deep breath, and his presence seems greater than any sentence. The last words he chooses aren't just a plea or a confession. They're layers of pain, empathy, and reflection. You feel the weight of each syllable, as if you could touch the essence of someone who tried to change while carrying an irreparable past. And you wonder, to what extent can subsequent actions erase or at least balance the gravity of a crime? The line between redemption and justice dissolves before your eyes. Bridget's family doesn't celebrate. Their silence is dense, almost physical. Each breath feels like a suppressed lament. You feel the tension between what is expected and what is truly felt. The confrontation with mortality, the reflection on human limits, and the uncertainty of what is fair hang in the air like a fog that won't dissipate. You realize the story doesn't end here, that there are still unrevealed fragments, shadows of decisions and consequences that lurk behind every Romero choice. And as you watch, the thought crosses your mind. What if he had truly changed? Would it matter? You feel the doubt piercing, penetrating. Would justice have meaning without the transformation? Would redemption have value in the face of Bridget's memory? It's at this point that you realize the complexity of the human mind, the red line that persists, the half-open door that insists on not closing. Every clue, every gesture, every silence is another layer of the story, a revelation you discover together with those on the other side, breathing the same tension-filled air. The cold light streams through the hallway, reflecting in Romero's eyes, which now stare at you, or at least you feel they do. An endless moment. Every second is decisive, every detail charged with meaning. You feel like you're witnessing not just the end of a life, but the complexity of an entire journey that blends cruelty, humanity, and transformation. And even while everything seems concluded, you sense something remains hidden, a final layer of truth, waiting to be uncovered, only hinted at, but powerful enough to keep your mind searching for answers. The doors close slowly behind him, and the corridor returns to its heavy silence, but you still feel the vibration of his presence, the impact of each decision, the invisible risk that looms. You understand that the reflection doesn't end here. Justice, redemption, guilt, transformation. Everything intertwines and leaves scars that cannot be seen but that you feel. And in this silent echo, you realize that the story continues, even if there are no more footsteps to hear, that the clock ticks, that the human mind never ceases to amaze, and that, perhaps, the last true word still hovers in the shadows, waiting to touch your own understanding of what truly matters. And now, after everything you've seen, felt, and almost touched with your mind's eye, I want you to do something simple but important. Write in the comments, "I'm with you until the end." That's all. A small gesture, but one that shows you've been with every shadow, every silence, every decision. You'll realize you're not alone in this search for the hidden truth, in this red line that runs through the human mind. If you felt the weight of this story, give it a like. Not out of obligation, but because this connection we've created together deserves to be recognized, felt, and shared in the intensity of what we've just experienced. Your every gesture strengthens this space where mystery and justice meet, where you and I continue to walk behind the scenes of lives that defy comprehension. And look, there's something else. On the side, there's a video that delves even deeper into this same spiral of decisions, secrets, and impact. It's worth sticking with me there because some answers that were left hanging here begin to take shape, revelations that might change the way you see everything that just happened. So write in the comments, leave a like, and follow me. The rest of the story is just beginning, and you're already a part of it.